Well, I am Brian Shapiro, official title, Global Brand Ambassador for the Oliva Cigar Company International. And I'm talking to you today from my office in Connecticut, USA, about an hour outside of New York City. So here we are. That's interesting. So when I got these questions from you, of course, the first thing I said was, well, these really aren't cigar questions. And it actually took me a little bit of time yesterday and to think about this. So I was like, who's my favorite superhero? So, and I guess I would have to say Spider-Man. And there's kind of a reason, a little bit of a story behind that, is that when I was 4 years old and I lived in Brooklyn and I was trick-or-treating for Halloween, I was wearing a Spider-Man costume. So that was, I remember actually from all those years ago, being very excited about having that costume. Well, it didn't turn out too well because I was running around and I was jumping and there were these bushes and I tried to jump over the bushes and I ended up getting caught and fell and, like cut my mouth and my lip or whatever. But I remember loving the costume. But I guess even though that happened, I will stick with Spider-Man. I'm going to hold to that answer. That was a really difficult question because most of the questions that I get are, who's the most interesting person you smoked a cigar with or cigar related. So I really had to think about that because just in life in general, you meet a lot of interesting people. And so I try to at least put it into some way in a cigar context. Otherwise, it would take me forever to go back into my memory to figure that out. But really, one of the most interesting people I've ever met is a gentleman who was hired by Jose Oliva many years ago. He's since retired. And he came on originally just as like an advisor to Jose, an uber smart guy, came from Cuba back in the 1960s. And one of the smartest guys I ever met. And I when he finally retired, I said, his name is Paul Alcazar, by the way. And we worked very closely together through the years, not only in international, but everything having to do with Oliva. And we became very good friends as well. And his interesting life about having left Cuba, the story about how he and his mother were online at some government building years back in the 60s, right when the Cuban Revolution had happened. And they ran into some other guy who was on a line to get his papers to get out of Cuba. And his mom got into conversation with that guy, and then they switched lines. And then she got her papers to get out of Cuba because obviously whatever conversation they had worried her. And so they left Cuba. They actually settled, believe it or not, originally in Connecticut, in the Hartford area, which is our state capital. And he ended up having an option. He could have gone to MIT, which is, if people aren't familiar with MIT, it's like if you're a super uber smart engineer type person, you could go to MIT. Or he decided actually to go to Villanova University, which because it was, even though he had scholarship, there was still a little money involved and they were very poor. And so he ended up going to Villanova, becoming a very successful international business person over the years. And then by coincidence, Jose met him at the White House years ago at an event celebrating Cuban Americans and things like that. And Jose, I guess, knew him a little bit before and said, hey, I'm growing my company. Now we're talking, this is 2006 probably. And he ended up coming on as an advisor, and then the rest is history. He stayed with us. But he was one of the smartest guys I ever met, and such an endearing guy. And the stories, and he was just a wonderful guy. And while there are probably some people I'm missing, Jose Oliva himself, Fred Vandermalier, who I've become friends with over the years, they're all interesting people. But he was just like one of those guys where you go, this guy had a great story to tell. He did it in the most elegant way. And he taught me so much about business and all types of things. So he's my vote. If I had to pick one person, I think he's it. Okay, well, you will get probably one day to see this firsthand. So every year, the Fred and the J. Cortez / Oliva family put on a party in Dortmund that everybody ends up at till, who knows, 3 a.m. And about 3 years ago, because last year we missed it because of COVID, but about 3 years ago, I grabbed the microphone from the DJ, because after the dinner, it becomes just like really a scene. And I grabbed the party. This is probably 1 a.m. I grabbed the microphone rather. And I don't know if you're familiar, because this is old school. I'm a little bit older than you. Rapper's Delight is a rap song from the 1970s. Now, your homework is going to be, and I'm going to test you because when I see you in person, I'm going to ask you if you listen to it. But you got to listen to this song, Rapper's Delight. So it was one of the original famous rap songs way before rap became what it is now. And I know every word to that song. So I grabbed the microphone and I rapped that song, and now that's become the thing. So the following year I did it again. I'm actually, Fred doesn't know this, but I got another song by the same group that I'm preparing for the next time we're back in Dortmund. So my answer, and anybody who knows me knows why I put that down. That's the song, Rapper's Delight by Sugar Hill Gang. So that's it. Okay, this was easy. I don't know how many TV shows, or if I'm watching a reality TV show in particular, the word like, you know, like, you know, like, I cannot believe how people use that word. It drives me insane. Like, I need to have therapy every time I hear the word because it drives me nuts. So absolutely 100%, two hands up votes. The word like is absolutely useless to me. Okay, now I don't know your thoughts on this, but occasionally, whether it's during the Olympics or even now, I was scanning channels, you know, on my TV last week, curling. You know curling, right? And I'll sit there and I will watch it because I'm really not sure what they're doing. But imagine that there's a bunch of people on this big sheet of ice and they're rolling a brick. And I really, no offense to anybody who's a curler, and they're sweeping to make this giant round thing. And I don't know why I watch, because it's so boring that I can't believe it's on TV. So I think that there's something going to happen that I'm missing, and it's going to be spectacular. And I watch it, and then I'm like, all right, no. And I change the channel. So hands down, curling. You know, this was one of these, I'm like, what? I don't know. And then I came up with coconut. And I thought, all right, coconut for a couple of reasons. Number one, it has hair. So that was one thing. All right. So I couldn't think of that many fruit with hair. Kiwi, too small, you know, and I'm not a big kiwi fan. There's like coconut, a little bit hard on the outside, but when you finally crack it, you know, you get in there. I love the flavor of coconut. So I guess maybe the combination of the hairy fruit and just fun to get in there. It just seems like a very difficult fruit to eat. Like if you were starving and all you had was a coconut, like, you know, Tom Hanks in Castaway, look how hard he had to work to get in there. So I figured, you know, maybe that might be an interesting fruit, but that was a tough question. But that's my answer. I'm sticking with it. So again, gave this some thought because it's been a long time since I watched, you know, with my kids growing up. I can't remember too many scary movies. So I went back into my own personal life and I realized that the scariest kids movie to me was Wizard of Oz. Think about those flying monkeys. Those guys, when I was little, those little monkeys were scary. I mean, and the witch, you know, the Wicked Witch, she was pretty scary. So I think I have to say that. But because I remember watching as a kid, oh my God, those monkeys, they're terrible. And then the witch was so scary, and I was so happy when she melted and she went away. So I think, you know, I think that probably is the scariest kids movie for me. Yeah, I thought about that, of course, as I did with all these, and I realized I identify with Sherlock Holmes. The most recent version, by the way, with Benedict Cumberbatch. I don't know if you've watched that series, but it's some of the best riveting, fast-moving TV in a very long time. It's now probably about 5 or 6 years since they aired it. But in general, Sherlock Holmes, because I'm always analyzing, I'm always trying to find the answer. And I figured that if I was, you know, if that was my calling and that's what I did, I think I'd be good at that because I can't let it go. I got to know why. You know, I got to figure it out. And so I thought, okay, Sherlock Holmes, he's always looking into it and trying to put the pieces together and logic and all that kind of stuff. So it makes you know, it could be OCD because you always got to find the answer. Sometimes it's like, you know, you don't need to know all the answers. But I guess that would be the guy I would identify with because I got to know. So that's it. You know, this is one that I thought about. Funny, you know, I don't really recall anything recently, maybe because it's been COVID and all this stuff. Maybe some of the crazy things that have gone on during COVID. You know, I was taking a walk This is not funny, but funny, quote unquote funny. But I was taking a walk up on the East River in New York, because I live in New York City, and there's this beautiful walkway, and I take a walk, and there's a beautiful park, and I'll take a walk up there and overlooking the water and the view of New York City and all that thing. And I'm just minding my own business, and I had the mask, and I was by myself, and there was nobody around me, so I had the mask on, kind of hanging low. It wasn't over my face. There was nobody there, and there was traffic. So there's a highway that runs along that walkway, and there was a guy in a car. And this was after it was pretty much vaccinations already. Because we are very vaccinated now in the States, and pretty much the CDC in the United States said, look, if you're outside, you don't need your masks or whatever. But you kind of get used to it. And if there's a large crowd, you say, I put it up. Maybe there's somebody who feels uncomfortable. I try to make everybody feel comfortable. So I wore it here. And this guy has his window down, and he's sitting in bumper to bumper traffic. And he starts yelling at me and like cursing. What the hell are you still wearing a mask for? What are you, crazy? Whatever. And I'm like looking around. I'm like, me? You're talking to me? And I was like, why are you yelling at me? You're in your car on the highway. You have nothing better to do than to yell at me. So that was really not funny, haha funny, but more like, we're living in such a funny time that when would that ever happen? That somebody would roll their window down just to yell at you at the top of their lungs. Why are you? And by the way, I wasn't wearing the mask, but I was wearing it around my neck, so it wasn't like it was on my face. So I just think people are acting weird funny. I wish I could come up with something funnier than that was happening, but I thought I would share that as a crazy funny. No, and it's not that I had a horrible high school thing, but I mean, everybody always says, God, if you could live forever, or if you could have extra years and all that kind of stuff, it's fun to think about. But when you go back and you realize, when you're become an adult, and then you have responsibilities, and having kids is the best part about it, of course, but all the trials and tribulations of life, and you go back to high school and you go, oh my God, I have to do all of that over again. So it wasn't specifically because I didn't like high school. I actually had a fine time in high school, but it's just thinking, worked so hard all those years, got to go back and do it again. I don't think so. So I'd say the answer is no. I don't think I'd want to do that again.